Hey, all you literary legends and luminaries. I'm Julie, and welcome to another episode of Booksmart. Today's book is a memoir by Christa Parravani, simply titled Her. I found Her at my used bookstore. It was one of those books I picked up several times but didn't buy it for one reason or another. I think the cover bothered me. They looked like Little Red Riding Hood or something. I don't know what it was. But since I couldn't find a good memoir, I finally decided to buy Her. It was good, but not incandescent as the cover review states. Her is about Krista and her twin, Kara. I hope it's pronounced Kara, not Kara. I've read a couple of twin books before, and I find them fascinating. Way back in the day when I used to read Sweet Valley Twins, remember those? Because those had just come out and my older sister always read Sweet Valley High books. But by the time I had graduated to Sweet Valley High books, I was more into Stephen King and V.C. Andrews than Sweet Valley High. In any case, twins have fascinated me because I've always gone back and forth thinking at times it would be cool to have a twin, but then other times glad I'm not, for I wouldn't want anyone to look exactly like me or be confused for me. Yet that twin telepathy is just phenomenal. Plus, twins, thanks to Sweet Valley, seem to fall into those stereotypes of one twin is the cool one and the other one is the smart one, like they're always opposites in some way. The essence of Krista's story is that she had a twin until her twin overdosed. Kara was brutally raped while walking her dog. After that, her life unraveled. She became a full-blown drug addict and then overdosed at age 28. Krista tells her story using some of Kara's journals as well, not too many, but just enough that it really adds texture to Krista's story. Let me read a part from the beginning when Krista is looking at herself in the mirror. And this is what she tells us. My reflection was her, and it wasn't her. I was myself, but I was my sister. I was hallucinating, Kara. This isn't a metaphor. I learned through reading articles on twin loss that this delusion that one is looking upon their dead twin when really they are looking at themselves is a common experience among identical twinless twins. It is impossible for surviving twins to differentiate their living body from their twins. They become a breathing memorial for their lost half. Kara's reflection became a warning. I would become her on the other side of our looking glass if I wasn't careful. It wasn't only her likeness I craved. For me, her self-destruction was contagious. I mimicked it to try to bring her back. To be nearer to her, I tore apart my life just as she shredded her own. Krista does a beautiful job at capturing that life of a twin, a life that most of us will never know, and how Krista picked the same fabric to reupholster a chair that Kara had picked years before, those kinds of moments. She always paints that inseparable nature of twins, yet also how they were at each other's throats. Krista gives readers the good and the bad of having a twin and then about losing a twin. Krista's narrative structure is all over the place, which I didn't find confusing. She jumps back and forth in time as well as adding in Kara's own journals. She mentions events several times before she develops them, which I didn't find irritating. The book possessed a fluidity that made it easy to read, yet did have poetic elements about it. Sometimes it reminded me of the memoir Molly with the writing style, which I did a Booksmart episode on a couple months ago. She also has some intense symbolism, like a sweater that Kara stole from her, a sweater that she was wearing when she was raped that ended up in police evidence that obviously Krista never got back. Krista's memoir is raw and has these beautiful moments that are incredibly universal. Here's another excerpt that explains this twinning well, yet interestingly enough, anyone can relate to the idea it's getting at. I try to understand the truths and see how what-ifs and if-onlys have altered my memories. I remember in plain terms what I could have done and didn't, what I did and fumbled. I see my sister's life through the veil of my failure to save her. It's as simple as this memory. The day after my sister's attack, I refused to get her a glass of water. The pain medicines caused her thirst. Her nose was broken, so she breathed through her mouth. She wept herself dry. I had been with her through the night. She'd allowed no other inside her room. I sat beside her and held her up as she struggled to swallow, put a soft pillow at the small of her back. The next morning I could hear her call my name and pretended not to hear. I couldn't bring myself to see her battered face in the daylight. What would have happened to Kara had I answered her call? Not just that one, all that I missed. The moment my sister fell under her rapist's hands, he untwinned us. The bodies were the same, but Kara became lost in hers. My body became a vessel of guilt, reminded us both of the past, the free, easy, joyful giving of sex, ripe, exposed youth, and the naive belly that still tickles at touch. It's not like this old boring question, when something happens to your twin, can you feel it? It's more like this. You've eaten something spoiled and it's made its way into every part of you, itching the skin, and you can't get at it. Or it's like a withered phantom limb you can't see, but you can feel every inch. It's your broken bedridden twin sobbing as you attempt to comb the knots from her hair. You try, but you can't reach the tangles. Her neck, it's been twisted too hard. She can't turn her head. She hates you for reminding her of what she was. You fear her for showing you what you could become. She also has a chapter written as just a dialogue between her and a psychic, which is fascinating, especially when Kara and Krista worked as phone psychics earlier in the story. Krista is a photographer, so she describes these sessions she has with her sister as she snaps photos of her alone and of them together. Krista's and Kara's story is highly dysfunctional. Krista marries simply because Kara had married. Kara ends up on Krista's honeymoon. While Kara is abusing prescription drugs, Krista steals pills from her and takes them herself. All sorts of things happen in the book like that. At times, neither Krista nor Kara are very likable, which makes them both all the more relatable because we ourselves can be very unlikable. Krista details her own unraveling then after Kara's death, her affairs, and her own drug abuse. At times she gets a little confusing as I don't have a complete grasp of what Krista was like before Kara's death and then after Kara's death. The book jacket leads the reader to believe that this is a clear-cut, obvious downward spiral after a twin's death and then a desire to become her sister. I didn't get that from the book. Not that that is necessarily a bad thing, just that the book jacket seemed to highlight an overall theme that didn't seem apparent to me. My biggest gripe about the book was at times I didn't feel Krista was being authentic. Not all the time, mind you, but there were just moments in the book when I felt like Krista had ulterior motives, like her purpose for sharing or repeating information was a bit underhanded. For instance, Krista reminds us 1,000 times that she was the smaller twin, the skinnier twin, and when she stops eating after Kara's death, there's little reflection on her behavior, almost as if she was bragging about her anorexia. When she is pregnant, she writes this, which is beyond cringeworthy. I grew round and robust in pregnancy, looking more like Kara than I ever had, even when we were girls. The sight of myself, my new body, was a jolt. It was hard to trust a body that looked like Kara's. Based on the cover picture alone, that's an over-exaggeration. To refer to her dead twin's normal body as pregnant is rather insulting, and their picture doesn't appear to support such a description. Maybe I'm overreacting to a simple comment, but that's just it. It's not a simple comment. Krista does this throughout the book, pointing out Kara's size, and I'm just wondering why. If it was past statements, I get it, because it would show growth, but at the very end, when Krista's story has come full circle and she's survived losing a twin and unraveling herself, and now she has this new baby, she throws in such a comment? Plus, if she truly wanted to become her twin, as the book jacket said, wouldn't she binge instead of starve herself? She also makes sure the reader knows that she saw a famous psychotherapist when she checks herself into the same place Marilyn Monroe went, Payne Whitney. This famous psychotherapist that apparently people in her inner circle knew all about and revered essentially said there's nothing wrong with Krista, that she is not borderline personality like her twin, that her mental state is temporary. So she's free to go. Krista writes this as if she's proving she has no certifiable mental illness, that makes her better than others, although she seems to brag about her anorexia. I don't know. Perhaps I'm being too sensitive here, so it might just be me. I just didn't fully trust her intent as the narrator at times, that there might have been some other underlying purposes for writing some of the stuff she did in the manner with which she did. Despite those issues, I would recommend reading her. It's unique, and I love unique books. It's about a topic that not many people can write about in regards to being an identical twin and then losing that twin at only 28. It's also written with a unique narrative structure, which I also appreciated. Maybe just find a used copy like I did. Thanks for watching. As always, my goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.